They don't work. You look at all the data. Baker Mayfield, I'm not blaming anybody, is better without OBJ. Baker's young. There's sort of an unspoken pressure to get it to a superstar, and that's what Odell was coming out of New York, a superstar. Baker's best year in Cleveland, the year he didn't have OBJ. Baker this Sunday played maybe his best game. OBJ was hurt early. That's not a shot on anybody. Chemistry is hard. I was talking to somebody this morning about this. I worked at a company that's had 50 TV shows, ESPN. One has had amazing chemistry. A guy named Tony, a guy named Mike. By the way, they had the chemistry before they worked at the company. They were newspaper guys for 25 years. Chemistry is so hard. It is so hard. There's a million pregame and postgame shows. All these networks have pregame shows, postgame shows. There's two shows that are legendary, the Barkley Show and the Howie Terry Jimmy Show. Why? It's chemistry. They all like each other. Shaq and Barkley and Kenny like each other, and Howie and Terry are best friends, and Jimmy, and they all like each other. Doesn't mean they're the most talented, the smartest, the funniest. They like each other. Like, chemistry's hard. And, like, this thing never worked. There's nobody to blame here. OBJ was a good teammate. Not an OBJ issue. He's done some stuff that to me is nonsense, but I got no problem with, he's been a good soldier here. But the bottom line is, when you are a superstar and you're a young quarterback, there is this sort of, this was a Dak Dez situation. Get him the ball. Nobody had to you don't have to tell people things sometimes. Like Baker's like, okay, OBJ's a superstar. I may want to get him the ball a lot. And there's this unspoken pressure. And I think it did put pressure on Baker. He wouldn't admit it. I saw a couple of times early in this relationship, something would happen and Baker would like over-support OBJ. He wanted so desperately to make it work. But let me defend Baker Mayfield on this. This is a really tough situation. You go into Cleveland, which is dysfunctional. You have the wrong coach. You have Jarvis Landry. Then you get a bunch of good running backs. Then you got new coaches. And then you got to make the OBJ thing work because OBJ is an infectious personality. He's a superstar, the one-handed catch. You want to get him the ball. But the numbers don't lie. Let's just go facts over feelings here. He's better without him. If Baker Mayfield, at his best at Oklahoma, sprinkled the ball around the infield. That's really when he's at his best. And the other thing is, when you're a young quarterback and you're struggling, Baker Mayfield, it's really hard to go into a room with a superstar and kind of have a forceful way about you. Tom Brady can look at Antonio Brown tomorrow and say, bruh, you're going to get 2 targets this weekend. The matchups, the way they roll safeties over, what's Antonio Brown going to say? That's what Big Ben, it drove AB nuts, but Big Ben would say, I got the Super Bowl rings, you don't. All right, like I'm the guy here. And so I think this thing, I never bought into the OBJ Baker thing. I never bought into it day one. And I said this, you're always best in a tenuous relationship. Just make a move on it. Like, just don't, because OBJ had a history of getting hurt. It was never perfectly going to work. So the longer you had OBJ, the longer you had him, the greater the opportunity for it to go sideways. And now he gets hurt. Nobody's fault. You don't have any value trading him. So in this league, you see this all the time in the NBA. Like, a player's unhappy, just let him go. Like it'll not get better. It'll get worse. You see this at companies all over America. If somebody's unhappy, just let them go. You see it at colleges all the time. Like a college basketball coach gets an offer, and instead of fighting him and keeping him, he's going to be bitter and resentful. Let him go hire a new football coach. So this is not a Baker fault. This is not an OBJ fault. I will say this. So I think the new people in Cleveland, Stefanski's really bright. The new GM is bright. I thought they'd figure it out really quickly. I thought they'd spot, because they've spotted some things really quickly, and they've done a really good job. I thought they'd spot it really quickly and just say, let's just move it out here. They didn't acquire OBJ. He wasn't their guy, right? It's always easier for a GM. Like, it's hard for the GM in Chicago to acknowledge Trubisky was a bad pick when you have stars taken after him. It's much easier. It's always been this way in the NFL to get a new GM and he can go, well, that was that guy's mistakes. That wasn't me. I thought the new GM would come in very quickly. They'd see, we got Landry and Njoku. Once they got Austin Hooper, the tight end, I'm like, okay, you're running out of ball. You can only have so many footballs here. You're asking Baker now to get everybody 7 targets and 9 catches. It's ridiculous. So I'm defending Baker on this, and I'm actually, in a way, defending OBJ. I think it was the responsibility of the front office in Cleveland to see that it didn't work. Look at the data. These are analytic guys. All these guys are analytic guys. Look at the numbers. Baker's not as good with him. Baker was better at Oklahoma, spreading it around. I'm surprised they didn't make a move earlier. I think Stefanski and the GM are very smart guys, and they're very into analytics. The analytics tell you this puppy don't work. It's Dak and Dez. It doesn't work. Nobody's fault. Doesn't work. Pure Talk USA, unlimited talk, unlimited text, 2 gigs of data, just $20 a month. Grab your mobile phone, dial pound 250, and say my name, Colin Cowherd. So Tom Verducci maybe next hour. Justin Herbert, Chargers quarterback, is also going to be joining us next hour. By the way, I don't want anybody to think that was a shot at my former employer, but I was talking about chemistry. It's impossible. All these networks create all these shows. It's unbelievable. You and I got along like 4 days in. That doesn't happen.
I don't even think
we've never even had a fight.
What are we going to fight about?
I don't know. I fight about everything. I'm difficult. By the way, if you're not ready to give up, of course you're not. The only everyday supplement for driven men. Check it out, mdriveformen.com today. Tom, next hour, I'm being told. So I get Tom Verducci and Justin Herbert.
It's a strong hour.
Strong hour, the quarterback, who, by the way, how great does it feel if you run a franchise, you own it, you run it, and you're like, oh, my God, the next 15 years, we got the quarterback. Hour 3 next. When I started my career back in Portland, I've talked about this. I talked about it at the other network. I talk about it occasionally here. I believe what I'm going to say is true, and I've spent more time in my life than I care to admit talking about this. Teams become their cities. They do. What do you know? Chicago stinks on offense my entire life. What do you know? The Rams, most of their good players, outside of Aaron Donald, are on offense. Every single Charger team that was any good in my life, it's a beach city, was all about offense. LA's always got good quarterbacks. Go back to Vince Ferragamo. Never been a problem. Chicago has always been about defense because Chicago's in the Midwest, and the Midwest is tough, and Chicago's blue collar, and I love that city. Working class, tough guys, and the fans love it, and that's what sells tickets, and that's what guys talk about over draft beers. Chicago's tough. The weather's tough. You got to be tough to live in Chicago. You don't have to be tough to live here. It's 72 degrees with a breeze at my house every day. Mojitos every day. It's easy living. In Los Angeles, you are fired as a general manager if you don't understand that it's a distracted market with mountains and a beach and pro college sports. You'll be fired. But Tom Telesco of the Chargers and Les Snead of the Rams, man, they can draft offensive guys. If they couldn't, they'd be fired. Ryan Pace has got a problem. He's the GM of the Bears. And in that city, it's become an offensive league. He's got no feel for offense. It's not a Matt Nagy issue. He'd be unemployed 5 minutes. Chicago my whole life has no feel for offense. That's not what the city is. The city's about hard work, head down, crappy weather, overcoming. Los Angeles, Jeff Fisher worked in St. Louis. He looked like a dinosaur an hour into Los Angeles. Nobody's selling defense here. Even Pete Carroll was a defensive coach. He was flash. Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush, the wide receiver, they were a flash program. This is a distracted market. LA is a home of stars. You need stars. It's distracted. You won't get people to games. If you can't draft them, you're out. We'll get a new guy. That's why Kawhi is such a weird fit with the Clippers. He doesn't talk. He's more about defense than offense. Will it work? We'll see. But Chicago has no feel for offense. They never have. They traded Khalil Mack for picks, right? They got Khalil Mack, and they gave up picks. The Raiders, a West Coast team, California team, went and got a bunch of good offensive players because that's what the Niners were about with Bill Walsh. And that's what John Gruden's about. And it's what the Rams are about. And now the Chargers go out and get Justin Herbert, and that's what they're about. And Seattle's got a bad defense again, and they're about offense and Russell Wilson. And Arizona's about offense. That's the West. It's distracted. We got college, pro sports, beach, mountains. You got to sell tickets. Pro teams everywhere. College teams everywhere. But in the Midwest, I know you think it's crazy. There's never been a great Laker team that wasn't flashy. There's never been a great Detroit Pistons team that hasn't been tough. The bad boys. They were always defined by Boston's the same way. Boston's a tough town. Got to punch you right in the forehead in Boston if you disagree on politics. Boston's Belichick, you say Brady, but they were really built. They always had great defenses. Ask Tom Brady. They didn't always have great offenses. Randy Moss, Welker, and Brady was that 2 to 3 year window. It was led by offense. It's always been led by defense. First 6 years, last 4. So the reality is Chicago's got no feel for offense. They haven't my entire life. Their defense outscores their offense. That's who they are. And to me, they've got to go. They got to coach. The only 2 things offensively they have, Allen Robinson and Matt Nagy. They got to get a new GM. They got to turn this franchise upside down. The league has changed. They got to go become offense. They got to think more West. They've got to think more sunshine. Mike Ditka's popular there. Tough guy. All the Chicago legends. You go on that Bears team. What were they about? Defense. Even their quarterback was headbutting people. That sells in Chicago. But the league has changed. They got to start over in the front office. You keep Matt Nagy. You keep Allen Robinson. Certain organizations have a feel for one side of the ball. New England's always had a feel for defense with Belichick. But even Seattle, a West Coast team, Pete Carroll's defense, what are they? It's all offense. I think Chicago, Nagy, Allen Robinson, keep everything else. They got no feel for. What a shock. They get Khalil Mack. The Raiders get all offense. Their defense 2 years later in Chicago carries the team. Again, it always does.